All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the AI is the New BI Software Demo Series. My name is Eric Cavanaugh. I'm very pleased to have Sean Keenan, VP of Product over at Unifi Software. Today he's going to show us what they have built. I've taken a look at this already, and it's really fascinating stuff, folks. I think they do represent this next generation of technologies for managing data in a data-driven world. And with that, Sean Keenan, take it away. Show us what you got.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate the introduction. And yes, today I'm going to be talking through Unifi Software's platform and primarily focusing on the data cataloging portion of that and how we've leveraged techniques like machine learning and artificial intelligence to ultimately deliver the experience that I'm about to show here. But essentially, this is the product that you're viewing here. Unifi is a web-based platform, so as long as you can access the URL, essentially a user can do any of the functions and capabilities I'm about to show here. The first thing that tends to happen when we go into an enterprise and actually leverage our cataloging software is we want to get connected to as many of the source systems that have data that enterprise essentially runs its business on. We're very robust from a data source connectivity. Pretty much anywhere that an enterprise would have data in any system they leverage, whether it's a relational database, whether it's something like Salesforce, whether they have maybe Excel spreadsheets sitting in a file system somewhere, we know how to connect all of those data sources and actually instantiate what we call the card catalog, meaning a catalog of all the data sets that we think exist inside those source systems. How that materializes itself is ultimately we basically build a listing of all data sets inside these enterprise data sources and make them very easily searchable and discoverable by a business user. So let's say I'm maybe a mortgage analyst at a big financial services company, and I might be going into Unifi to say, Unifi, I want to run some analysis on our loans portfolio, and I'd like to type the word loans essentially into your search box, and I want you to bring back anything that has any relevance to me, essentially, as an analyst within inside this company. This isn't just a full text search. This is essentially a relevance-based search, meaning people's results get influenced by who they are inside the application and other users that look like them that also are using the application. And here you'll see I've got a result set of entities that exist inside Unifi. Maybe at this point I'm not ready to look at any columns that have relevance to loans. Maybe I just want to start at the data set level. And this is great. I actually click on that. I see there's a loans-based data set inside the catalog. I can go over here and actually see that's been used quite a bit inside the environment. So that tells me that there's other people within inside the organization likely using this data to generate insights on behalf of the business. And let's say I want to explore it a little bit further. I'm going to go ahead and click on that data set. And I'm going to get a sample of rows brought into my browser so I can have a more interactive experience around the data. And let's say I'm looking at kind of each of these attributes that are part of the data set. I can see what the data type is that Unifi thinks exists around that particular attribute. And I see this attribute called interest rate. Well, that's going to be really interesting and important to me from an analysis standpoint. So I want Unifi to actually tell me a little bit more about it. I want to know more about this attribute called interest rate, meaning, hey, you know, from a loan portfolio standpoint, where tends to be the interest rates that we underwrite these loans on? And it looks like I've got a pretty big bolus of loans here, maybe between 4 and 6%. And that's kind of what I would expect. But we do have some outliers here in the data set, and that's really good for me to understand as well. Looks like we have some 12% loans, some 10% loans. Those are very higher interest rate loans that I would have expected to see in the data. So this is all very interesting for me to understand. But maybe I want to know a little bit even deeper statistics about that attribute. Unifi computes a number of stats and, through our profiling routines on all of these data sets that exist inside these systems to really educate the analyst on what they can expect when they're using this data for analysis. So you'll see we track things like the minimum, the max, the standard deviation, the median, the mode. We capture all distinct values of string or character-based columns. So again, very informative for the end user to just get a general sense of what can I expect using this data set, and then what can I expect around the individual attributes that I might use from an analysis standpoint. The other piece that exists here in the application is what we call essentially the data dictionary or business glossary that's more business focused around the data. A lot of this through our techniques that we leverage, is automatically generated from these source systems where we actually get a business description or taxonomy around the actual technical metadata that's more business friendly. I may not always know what a column name is, let's say in this Oracle table, and what it actually means to me as a business user. So this area of the application becomes very helpful to me as an analyst to really understand the business context of what that data means. This is fully configurable. There's a whole crowdsourced scoring and commenting engine here. We have a number of customers that leverage this area of the application in a number of different ways. We have organizations that will track down who the data steward is all the way down to the attribute level. We have a number of columns that will, number of customers who will go in and flag which attributes have sensitive information in maybe a PII or PCI or HIPAA compliance nature, and then actually put in policies essentially around who can use that data. So a very flexible area of our application, and really it's more the Wikipedia essentially of that enterprise's data. So me as a business user can truly understand the context of it. The other piece we have in the discovery nature of our software is when we are crawling these source systems, running things like profiling and computing statistics around the individual attributes, there's a number of things that we try and detect. One is what we call related data sets, meaning I'm looking at this loans data. Well, does it relate to any other data essentially in our enterprise ecosystem across all these source systems that Unifi is connected to? We will try and detect if there is correlation between related data sets. We also do something we call similar data sets, meaning I'm looking at this loans data. Oh, wow, it's statistics, it's attributes. The data type of those attributes look very similar to this data set that's sitting over here. And how that manifests itself for the end user, and there's a number of really innovative techniques that we're using behind the scenes to do this work, is a user can be looking at this loans data, and Unifi is automatically telling the user that, hey, it links to some customer data. Do you want to go explore that customer data? So this becomes a very natural experience for the end user where they're exploring one data set, and Unifi is basically giving them a pathway to explore other related or other similar data sets that might exist inside the enterprise ecosystem. Here's where you'll see where our discovery algorithm is also doing a lot more than just generating statistics. We try and detect higher level data types, things like phone number, social security number, FICO score, URL, host number. These are all higher level data types that Unifi will detect and actually flag as an internal data type that's more business friendly, if you will, to the end user. We also do a lot around data that's sensitive in nature. As we're discovering and profiling these source systems, we will flag which attributes we think are sensitive in nature. So after our cataloging process is complete, somebody can log into Unifi and say, hey, Unifi, show me everywhere across our entire landscape where you think your algorithm found sensitive data. Because one, we might have social security numbers sitting in some spreadsheets that we weren't aware of, and there might even be users who have access to that shouldn't have access to that data. And Unifi will automatically discover and alert that essentially to the enterprise. So again, just a lot of different things that happen here as we're kind of discovering and profiling this data. The other area of our application that we have is what we call derived attribute. So these are things that either our discovery engine is recommending through our recommendation engine to the end user that they might want to apply when they use the data, or just other business rules that have maybe been applied by users who have used the application stack. So here you can see that our discovery engine found in that customer table that, hey, there is an attribute that looks like an email address to us, but some of them are malformed. I don't know, maybe they're missing the @ sign, or maybe they're missing the .com. Do you want us to try and go cleanse or fix that for you automatically? You'll see things like our discovery engine found that, hey, there is a field called gender, but we found some values that have lowercase female, some values that have an uppercase F, some values that have an uppercase female. Well, why don't you let us just try and standardize that to one winning value for you automatically? These are all things that our recommendation engine essentially is serving up to the end user as they're going through the process of preparing data for analysis. The other thing that we have here is you can see, has anybody ever applied any filters to this data when they've been using it for analysis? Looks like somebody maybe filtered out a particular year's worth of data. This all becomes valuable because as this institutional knowledge grows around how people are using data within inside the enterprise, it's all stored in one place, and really that tribal knowledge around data starts to disappear. It becomes more readily available essentially to every user of the application. So that's the catalog experience when the user doesn't necessarily know what they're looking for. They've got maybe a hypothesis in mind, and they want to go see, hey, does the data even exist somewhere for me to go test that hypothesis? The other area of our application, and we're the only vendor in the market that has this, is there's also a knowledge graph that sits on top of the Unifi catalog. This knowledge graph, what it does is it basically takes every piece of metadata that exists in an enterprise ecosystem and figures out how it relates to every other piece of metadata. And there's a lot of sophistication that happens here. There's a natural language search experience that sits on top of that knowledge graph with a number of machine learning libraries that are constantly pulling that metadata as new data sources come online or as people are using data within inside the ecosystem to make smarter recommendations on behalf of the business user. But what that knowledge graph really represents is more this experience where, let's say I know already the question I want to ask about my business. And I'm just going to go into Unifi and say, hey, Unifi, go get me the min, the max, the count of interest rate. I just want to know the answer right to that question right now. And through that natural language search experience, Unifi just goes and provisions the answer on behalf of the end user. You can imagine how this can manifest itself in an enterprise. Just having natural language search directly against these raw data sources is extremely powerful, where I can just ask questions and get the answer brought back immediately. And we do a lot behind the scenes on this. If I want to know a little bit more about interest rate and how it's being used across the enterprise, I can drill in here and essentially see these related assets of how people are using interest rate from an analysis standpoint. So here I can see that, oh, okay, somebody built something they're calling arm loan indicator, and they're using interest rate essentially on behalf of that analysis. That's really helpful for me to understand. I can go in and actually see the profiling results right here in this particular search view. So if I want to know more detailed statistics around that particular attribute, I can see them right in this view. We also have the data lineage, essentially, of how interest rate was generated, meaning did somebody take something from this source system, maybe enrich it or mash it up with data from this other system, and generate something called interest rate inside our data ecosystem? Unifi is able to crawl that and figure that out, essentially, from a data preparation standpoint. So, again, all very interesting information for me to have as an analyst to understand how better to use this data to actually facilitate an experience. And, you know, the nature of the questions is pretty unbounded. I could go in here and say, hey, I'm going to be using the Twitter API Unifi. So, and this attribute called possibly sensitive is something I want to know a little bit more about. Will you tell me what Twitter is exposing to us in terms of what the description of that field is and what data sets it actually exists in the Twitter API? So, super functional. I can pin, you know, questions that might be interesting to me. I can even go in and say, hey, just show me all the stats for that loans data set. I want to know all the distinct values. I want to know the count for all the metrics. I want to know the min, the max, the standard deviation for every column that looks like it's has some relationship to a numeric type data type. So again, super functional, super rich, a really easy exploratory experience for that business user to get a better sense of their data and literally just ask direct questions of the data. A lot of sophistication here, a number of libraries we're using an algorithm to do things like relevance-based type ahead. Obviously, we're doing a number of techniques to figure out things like similar data sets and related data sets. And this is really, in our opinion, the new era of how analysts are going to interact directly with data and leverage data from an analysis standpoint.
Yeah, this is really powerful stuff, and I think there are a couple key components to drill into quickly. One is that you crawl across all these data sets. So when this gets deployed somewhere, you connect it to all the relevant data sets, and then it just starts crawling through them and identifying what kind of information is there thus enabling this really powerful multidimensional search capability, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this really isn't an experience that exists for the business today. Most business users are exposed to data not at the source level. It's usually exposed to them after it's been prepared or put in something like an enterprise data warehouse. We're connecting directly to the data sources and exposing in a really nice, elegant user experience information about the data in those data sources and essentially how it all relates together. So that becomes very powerful for the analysts when they can literally just go directly at these source systems, bridge data together, and start understanding interesting insights about the business.
Yeah, and if you could show the visualization again when you were trying to better understand the definition, I think, of some terminology that you were using. I think it was with respect to the loans. And you're able to show a visualization that has some different components to it such that you can kind of understand where different terms came from, what different terms mean. And I think the other key component here is you've got artificial intelligence underneath the covers here looking for patterns in the data, looking for ways to connect these disparate data sets, right? And then the end user, and it could be anyone in the organization, can go in and collaborate on defining or refining or, for example, fixing things that maybe the AI got wrong, correct, such that you have this collaborative effort around incrementally improving the cohesion of your information landscape, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a great point, Eric. Yeah, as you know, our algorithms and really the nature of any of these advanced analytic or machine learning libraries is the more data and the more metadata you're able to feed those algorithms, the stronger the outcome is. So as people are obviously bringing new data sources online and then ultimately using and exploring the data through our interface, that is all new metadata that gets fed into our algorithms, and our recommendations just continue to get stronger and stronger and stronger as people log into the application and actually explore through these data sets.
Yeah. Well, you know, the concept of a data dictionary or a business dictionary is not new, but it seems to me that the technologies today, such as Unifi, what you're showing us here with this platform, are scalable to the level that we can finally now achieve these objectives that many people in organizations have tried to do for many years, right?
No, that's exactly right. Yes, you're spot on. Things like running statistics against data sets or actually having a data dictionary about your data are not new concepts. How that metadata and how that data is being used today, though, are where all the new innovations are happening. So, again, we look at anything we can learn about a customer's data as our ability to provide them more automated insights. So just the more we can learn, the more input we get into the systems, as well as what we get when we connect to the systems. It's how you use that data and metadata that is actually where all the new innovations are happening.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting and a very, very good point. You know, we just did a radio show yesterday, in fact, or on Monday, I suppose, talking all about artificial intelligence and machine learning and the importance of training the algorithms. And that's where human interactivity is so critically important because, as you suggest, over time, as many users in a large organization will interact with this system, those algorithms are getting better and better trained incrementally every single day to the point where you will, I'm sure, reach these inflections and suddenly end users and the organization will learn really compelling and powerful things about their company that they just did not know before, and that would not have happened were you not to have this kind of platform underpinning the architecture, right?
No, that's exactly right. Yes, so again, the more users that are actually connecting and exploring right against the raw data, the more innovative insights that company is going to find out about their data that were not previously known. So, and it's that interaction today that doesn't exist in the enterprise where it's happening, but no one's actually capturing the activity and doing anything smart with it. So, and that's essentially what happens through the user experience here.
Yeah, and one last question I'll throw over to you. Obviously, one of the hot topics these days is personally identifiable information and personal and sensitive information. How big a component of your platform is that to your designers? In other words, how important is it for you to be able to identify PII and be able to build policies around that?
Yeah, you know, the real underpinnings of what we did when we first came to market from a product standpoint was we knew this was an enterprise product, and we knew that things like security and governance were extremely important to the enterprise, especially around this new era of kind of democratizing data. If you're going to enable thousands of analysts to log in and explore these source systems, you better ensure that you're not exposing the organization to any risk. So that was definitely a core tenet of what we built. We have things like row and column level security, the ability to mask, encrypt. We have our algorithms built where we've defined a bunch of out-of-the-box data types that we try and go discover, things like social security number, email address, things like your physical address. Those are all things that our application will literally crawl across all of these source systems and tell you where we think any of that sensitive data exists. Because we know the governance leads or the data stewards within these enterprises are going to want to go in and enforce the right policy, meaning, hey, Sean's in sales. There's no reason why he should see social security number. So I want to make sure that he's not allowed to see it, and I lock it down everywhere that's appropriate. But hey, the person in finance or in HR is actually able to see that attribute, so we're going to make sure that that policy is in place to enable them to leverage it when needed. We also have a facility where we ship with those out-of-the-box data types. A customer can give us any pattern they want us to go find, and our discovery engine will go find that custom pattern. So super flexible model. We can literally walk into any country, any enterprise located anywhere, and if they have some sort of unique pattern in their data that they'd love for us to go find somewhere across all their data sources, they just tell us what that pattern looks like, and our discovery engine is happy to go locate it. So, we put a lot of thought in to how we manage essentially security and governance and manage not exposing the organization to risk by allowing analysts to have this capability. It was definitely something we were very thoughtful of right from the beginning.
Well, that is just fantastic stuff, folks. Like I said, this really does represent the future of information management, it seems to me, and it leverages all of these powerful capabilities, including artificial intelligence, including collaboration, including, of course, machine learning as a subset of all those capabilities to enable companies to really finally get a handle on what information they have, what it means across all sorts of different data types. Well, Sean, fantastic demo. Thank you so much, folks. Hop online, search for Unifi Software. Just go to unifisoftware.com. That's UNIFI software.com. Thanks for your time. Great job.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, folks, you've been listening to AI is the New BI. We'll talk to you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.